Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. My name's Andy Putland. I'm chairman of the Goldsmiths Craft and Design Council. It's my privilege and pleasure to welcome you all this evening. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce you this evening to Catherine Bishop, who will be taking up proceedings. Thank you, Catherine.
Thanks, Andy. So good evening, everyone. Welcome to tonight's In Conversation, focused on innovative design and hosted by both the Goldsmiths Craft and Design Council and the Goldsmith Centre. So this year, the Council celebrates 111 years in existence, having been originally founded in 1908. And some of you might have been here last year when we had our birthday cake for 110 years. But this year, actually, we want to do something a little bit different. And so we've brought together a selection of renowned designers and master craftspersons who are working here in the UK, who each have something very special in common. And so the four people here before you, not myself, are actually all winners of the prestigious Goldsmiths Company Award, which is a prize that we give every year at the annual Goldsmiths Craft and Design Council Awards, solely at the discretion of the Council and only for the most exceptional, outstanding design in 2D or 3D entries. And it's only awarded when, in the Council's judgment, an entry achieves the highest standard of design and originality, and something we're noticing increasingly is also innovation. And so today we're going to hear from each of these winners, some of whom have scooped prizes more than a decade ago, and in the case of Fred, 4 times, and others such as Tom, who won as recently as 2017. And they will be sharing some of the stories behind their award-winning pieces, how they've tamed an array of materials from enamel to Baroque pearls to gold to rubber, diamonds, into inimitable pieces of art and design and beautiful creations, which you will see on the screen behind you. So I do have to note, we did have Ornella Januzzi scheduled to join us this evening. Unfortunately, she's unable to join us. She's actually about to have her first baby, so her doctor has actually told her to rest up. So we're wishing her lots of love, and she is very, very sorry not to make it this evening, but we will still get a peek of some of her beautiful designs on the screen. So without further ado, going to introduce the 4 designers and craftspeople here with us tonight. So on my left, we have Zoe Harding, fine jewellery designer and consultant, who has worked with the likes of Vivienne Westwood and whose designs have been sold through Fortnum & Mason. We have Fred Rich, one of the UK's leading master enamelers, and as we noted, a multiple winner of the Goldsmiths Company Award, as well as many other Goldsmiths Craft and Design Council awards. John Moore, conceptual and creative jeweller who is known for his natural inspirations and beautiful tactile and sculptural pieces. And Tom Rucker, a master jeweller who is renowned for his quite detailed and very daring work in platinum, and also for creating his own beautiful coloured platinum alloys. So, welcome, you 4. I'm going to begin with Zoe. So, first of all, you were in fact the very first person to win the Goldsmiths Company Award with a 2D design, and this was for your Conserving Our Arctic Habitat medal back in 2013. So this is actually an achievement that no one has matched since. No one has won the Goldsmiths Company Award since Zoe with a 2D design. So can you tell us a little bit more about this design itself and its messaging and how it felt to win?
Thank you very much. It's brilliant to be here. When I received that award in 2013, it was an enormous surprise to receive that award at all. I entered 2 categories that year and received gold for both. So I sat down back in my chair, absolutely elated, and thinking that my part was done and that I could just, think on that and enjoy the rest of the award ceremony. So when I saw my name pop up again for the company award, I was really taken aback and amazed and super surprised when it was me called up. And I'm still equally surprised, especially, as I sit, everyone that I'm sat with right now, their work is incredible, and not only are they amazing designers, but also they're craftspeople too. So that's, it's fantastic to be in such great company. For the design itself, I was quite keen to try something new. My world was very much jewellery, freelancing at the time, making pieces for different outlets or exhibition. So I wanted to try something new, and that's the way I've always used the competition, is to stretch myself and try something else. So when I saw the brief to look outside the circle to create your idea of a contemporary medal, I thought, okay, I'm going to settle on this one, and it was like an invite to try an art medal, something new for me. So when I looked at the theme, I thought it had to be something that meant something to me, and at the time I'd recently seen a programme on television, a great documentary about the impact on our environment, certain environmental challenges that we're facing at the moment, and it looked at melting ice caps and things like that. So there was some really challenging imagery in that programme. Polar bear sort of stranded on a sort of postage stamp kind of piece of ice, emaciated. It was very heartbreaking, and it really spoke to me. So I thought, right, I'm going to focus on this. And as I set to start drawing this polar bear form, it naturally came that it would be sort of an angular form, and then that evolved into the sort of iceberg shape on the reverse. And then, the more I researched the subject, I realised that actually the Arctic habitat is facing challenges both above the ice, but also below into the water, the impact of pollution affecting the marine wildlife as well. So trying to convey those messages in one piece.
And I think, you captured it beautifully. You can see the polar bear on the top left and the whale on the bottom right. So yes, very worthy winner. And actually, Fred, you have also worked with some beautiful kind of natural designs in your pieces as well. And one which really stands out and was actually a winner in 2009 was the Britannia silver jug and dish, which featured beautiful birds and their eggs and myriad kind of rich iridescent colours of enamel. So when it comes to creating these pieces, as well as pieces such as the Venus vase here, can you tell us a bit about how you put the design ideas together and come up with all of these details?
Well, every piece has its own starting point, so it depends whether it's something that you've just seen or someone's come up with you with a brief. With the reed warbler jug that you mentioned, actually that was a piece that I made with Christopher Lawrence, and so it grew out of conversations really, and
It's beautiful.
it's sort of the starting point was really Christopher wanted some enamel on his piece at the end of the day, but it sort of grew into something a bit grander than that.
Into an enamelled piece.
Yeah, well, yeah, and we were just talking about, so because he's a bit of a twitcher as well, and well, I'm not a twitcher, but I'm a closet
It's okay
twitcher.
if you are. I am as well.
And he told me, well, we were talking about reed warblers and this idea of reeds and water. It's because it's a water jug. That's the starting point, and that they build their nest by weaving the nest on 3 reeds, so you get a triangular sort of thing, so that it moves with the wind and stays level. And from that, this triangular jug, this kind of tilting triangular jug, was how I conceived the idea. And then he came up with ideas of hammering silver to make it look like water and ripples and all that sort of stuff. So it kind of grew. It grew over a period of time. It was quite amazing, really. But then I like to work with a narrative, so I like to weave a story into what I'm doing, whether it's for my own personal benefit or for the client's benefit. It doesn't really matter. The story isn't important, but as a starting point, it gets your imagination going. And so with this one, the reed warbler is kind of the centre. The bearded tits are by the by, just for the colour and stuff. But when I would rather the jug had been triangle all the way down, but Chris wanted it round to make it fit better and stuff like that. So we had all these compromises and things. But one of the things that I felt very strongly about was the basin with the jug not on it didn't have a focus, and so I enamelled a bit a plaque that.
So you can see the kind of details around it that almost
You've got one
replicate the reeds.
well, is there a picture? Underneath the jug, there's a plaque, and in that plaque, there's a bird's nest, a reed warbler's nest, and it has 4 reed warbler eggs. But the reed warbler is preyed upon by cuckoos, and so there's a cuckoo's egg in there. So the whole narrative of again, we're back to the natural world, this sort of the cycles of life and death, and that sort of thing. And
That's
so,
really lovely.
And there's a little cuckoo feather on the handle of the jug, just to kind of remember, to remind you that something's happened.
Yeah.
And it's not all lovely.
As is the natural world, I suppose.
And the same with the Venus vase. That's about cycles as well.
Yeah.
Cycles of coming out of the water and going back into the water, and just various fables.
So we've got the Venus vase on screen now, and it's also out in the atrium. Some of you have probably seen it just before this talk.
Venus is she's got nice floating aids, and it's being pulled
Great hair.
by these 4 kind of seahorse things, and their reins are snapping like an umbilical cord. So there's a whole lot of symbolism and stuff, which is by the by, really. I just work on things and take different fables and stick them all together into an image.
But it's a beautiful piece and thoroughly deserving of the award.
Thank you.
So Tom, I'm sure if any of you guys were present at the 2017 awards, you will remember very well Tom's Geo-Niot brooch here on the screen. I think we spent half the evening applauding your prize winnings that night, but again, thoroughly deserved. It actually scooped 5 awards in total, including the Goldsmiths Company Award that evening, and was actually unlike any entry that we saw that year. As we see, this striking blue colour is truly eye-catching. So, Tom, your work is largely synonymous for many of us with the phrase innovative, and I know we've had some quite interesting conversations around how we see innovation. So can you tell me kind of what inspires you to innovate, or what motivates you to produce these pieces?
Good evening, and thank you for having us here tonight.
You're welcome.
Well, I wouldn't really describe my approach as innovative. It's especially when we talk about my color platinum. I sat down at a time, I think it was in early 2016, and I felt quite bored about the choice of precious metal I work with. I have to say platinum is a fantastic precious metal. It acts perfectly fine with the laser, but there is not really much you can do with it. Platinum is a very rare species when it comes to an element, to a precious metal. You can't galvanize it, you can't throw anything into the alloy to alter the color. It's quite boring because it's always silver color. So I was looking for possibilities how to alter the color of platinum. And I started with trying to enamel platinum, but enamel wouldn't stick on the surface. That's down to probably Fred can explain it much better than me. But there is the technical properties of platinum doesn't allow you to stick anything on top. So I was a bit stuck in my thinking of adding color to the metal. Until that kind of, let's call it an accident. It wasn't an explosion in my workshop, but it was a small accident, and I had to evacuate my workshop. And when I came back, something has turned colorful. And
the day in the life with
yeah,
Tom.
kind of. So I did learn from my accident. There is actually something you can do with platinum. And having said that, it took me a few weeks to kind of get control. Well, that's a little bit too good. I still haven't control about the process. It is technically not possible what I do. When I summarized it in my patent script, that idiot of, sorry to say that, but he said, no, it doesn't work what you do. And I said, but here's the result. He said, no, it's not working. It can't work. On paper, it doesn't work. And then I said, okay, here's the proof. It works. Having said that, it is still quite difficult to control the color. I know roughly it will come out blue or purplish or green. And I was playing with my idea for quite a while, and then I have to say, innovation, that's probably one of the last stages of my process. There is something more important before innovation, and that's motivation. Especially the council with providing a platform for us makers, the awards, is the best platform to submit a work, to have it judged from a highly competent team of judges, and getting the feedback. And I would like to say thank you to Brian, because Brian, I would regard him as one of my influential people who had a big impact on my career. Brian was always giving me this motivation. And in 2016 he said, Tom, I want you to submit a piece with your color platinum for the next competition, which I've done in 2017. It was a tough time, but because my dad passed away just in the middle of making the brooch, I designed and made the brooch, especially for the awards. There was a point I did not want to continue to work on it because of mourning for my dad, who was my master. He was he was a jeweler like me. I'm the 4th generation. And I found it really difficult to finish it, but especially because I wanted to show my dad, look, this is what I have made. That has probably pushed me to come up with a piece which was still until today my most outstanding piece I've ever made.
So the motivation leads to the innovation.
Absolutely.
Yeah. That's a really lovely story.
Yeah.
And of course, as we know, a thoroughly deserving winner as well that year.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for sharing that. It's such an interesting backstory to the piece as well. And like you say, having those people around you in the industry that encourage you as well.
I think this is the most, even more important than providing the actual facility to train people, is to give a hand to those students and to guide them and to help them to develop their own ideas. It's all about staying unique, staying original, do not copy. That's what I tell my students I'm mentoring. Do not go with any trends, just have your weird idea become true, because that may be a winner at the end of the day, because you're the first one.
Certainly. And I think, well, talking of first, another quite groundbreaking piece, another that you can see out in the atrium was John's necklace, which again was unlike anything that we'd actually seen before. It actually predated Tom's piece by a year, but it kind of showed this way in terms of this innovation that we started to see flowing into the awards over the last few years. And as I know, at the time we hadn't quite seen anything like this. It's a combination of silver, rubber, diamonds, a really bold magnetic clasp, and it can be worn in quite a variety of different ways. So John, can you tell us a bit about the inspiration behind this piece? Because, as I say, it's unlike anything we'd really seen before.
Well, thank you for having me, first of all. It's a pleasure to be here. It's something that you get asked quite a lot as a maker, where the inspiration comes from. And I think having left university and education, you no longer have a brief to work to unless you're good at writing your own, which I'm not. But so I guess my point is that really the inspiration is everything I've absorbed throughout my life, particularly when I was a child. And you're really a melting pot for all these experiences and things you've handled or observed, and then it has a way of just coming out in a natural way. Because
I was reading this week that you used to be tinkering at the kitchen table, taking things apart, rebuilding them while everyone else was playing outside or on their computer games, and you were always fascinated with how things were made. Is that right?
Yeah, almost. I wasn't so much dismantling existing objects, but I was always to be found making things at the kitchen table, and being nagged at to clear it away because we need to have dinner. My mum's actually in the audience. She'd be like, "Clear the table, John."
She can confirm.
Yeah. But at the time, I was playing a lot with puppetry and things. There was always movement in the things I was making, or they were wearables and masks or headpiece of some kind, wings. I was fascinated by flight and birds and fish and scales and other forms in nature. And I guess if I was to cite anything specific, it would be not just natural but man-made objects. Venetian blinds randomly. The engine of a jet engine, but then if you look at the underside of a mushroom, you've got this beautiful slats. Also the body is very much an influence as well, and finding a way to accentuate the body's natural movement and dealing with these negative spaces around the head and neck. So it was very important to me that this piece moulded to the neck and shoulders. And really catches the light. So it needs a body to come to life in the same way that puppetry does. So your energy is kind of passing through it.
That's really interesting, because with the rubber kind of centre through the middle, it does allow it to sit really beautifully here. And like you say, the diamonds almost kind of fill these negative spaces that you have in between each of the fins. Would you call them fins?
Yeah, well, fins, slats. I don't know. I don't really have names for things.
Your Venetian blind inspiration.
Yeah.
Again.
But the I guess the bit I'm most pleased with is the rubber in the middle, because I had to devise a way to thread the pieces on so that they wouldn't spin freely of each other. So that as one piece moves, the next one moves, the next one moves. In the same way that a flock of birds will react to their neighbours and create that beautiful murmurations.
Yeah, lots of good twitching terms and things happening here tonight. It's quite interesting as well. Again, sometimes it are those hidden elements, almost like the cuckoo's, the nest with the cuckoo's egg as well. It's sometimes those hidden parts that actually really make a piece as well, I think we found with the awards. So Fred, I'd love to return to you, if you don't mind, to talk a little bit more about enamel. Because it's actually an art form that we've seen, we've actually been very keen to kind of reignite through the Goldsmiths Craft and Design Council Awards. And a year or two ago, we've actually expanded our category for enamelers who wish to enter, and it's now become kind of a fully encompassing category where we're bringing in more of the slightly more like non-traditional, kind of playful takes on enameling. So I'd love to get your thoughts on enamelers today, or anyone whose work you find quite interesting, or what you think of this kind of more creative side of enameling.
Well, I was quite excited when I first heard about that new category, but I think I must have got the wrong end of the stick, because I thought it was about pushing enamel into making it something it wasn't already, into being much more free with it and much more spontaneous. Enamel isn't a spontaneous medium, but I was happy to go along with it.
Yeah.
And actually, when I talked, because I was judging last year, and so though I wasn't judging that category, I was in the room with the pieces and stuff, and it sort of just felt like it was just an arty version of enamel. So I didn't understand why the ordinary category wasn't that anyway. So I'm a bit of a loss with it, but I can see where it could really go.
Yeah. So we had some interesting jars, I remember, that were kind of enamelled. And
well, there was two people that really stood out for me. I mean,
Yeah.
Jessica, because Jessica Turrell, for instance, who made an enamel look like metal patination. So it looked like patination. And then Elizabeth Campbell, who kind of, although it looks simple it looks quite simple. She was using things that go wrong for artistic benefit. It was just amazing, because she was using bits of wire that weren't there anymore. The shadow of a wire was creating a kind of beautiful piece. So, hats off to it. I think it could be really great, but I still don't. I still think that it needs a bit more clarification.
There's capacity to make it more creative.
Well, at Collect, there was some bloke from Barcelona who was doing enamel chain, which just because it was using the the kind of surface tension of wet enamel, which just clung to the chain and then firing it. It was just lumpy and bumpy.
The kind of drip.
I mean, it wasn't particularly beautiful, but you could see it as a springboard for something else. It could be fantastic. So I don't know where it's going to go, and I don't know who's going to lead it. And someone's got to come along and be absolutely fantastic, and then anyone else will follow.
And
but
try something
I can
different.
see that it could be brilliant, and I've had a few goes at just trying to, knock things about to try and get that sort of that quality. But I have to say that I know you want me to go about contemporary people, but the last few years I've been looking at a lot of old pieces by Fabergé Feliz and Lalique, and their inventiveness and their sense of what you can do, the gall that you can do things with is just staggering. I mean, you think it's all terribly precious, and it's not. I mean, they do these amazing things, and they take files to it, hack it and bash it, and to get effects that you wouldn't dream of going down that route.
Feels wrong almost.
It's completely wrong, but they get away with it, and the effects are amazing. I mean, there's a Picasure plaque, and it's a pansy, but it had all these veins in it, and they couldn't work out how they'd put the veins into this Picasure. And then when you looked at it under the microscope, they had just got some files and just ground lines into the back after they finished it. So, I mean, really, really brave stuff. So I think there's an element, when you're trying to push new boundaries, I think you've got to go back a bit as well and see what kind of boundaries have already been pushed.
Because things do come full circle, don't they, in terms of techniques and trends and designs, and sometimes the old ways are the best ways, or even the most interesting ways.
I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that.
But as in, there might be some inspiration that you can pull out from these just nuances of where they've dared to try something, and it could take us forward.
Yeah.
So actually, I was just looking, because the pieces before, which were almost these two, are they kind of two beer jugs, perhaps?
Well, there are
these ones here with the guitarists, because you were saying obviously enamel isn't a spontaneous material. So with something like this, how long would it actually take to?
Well, I sort of call it freezing a moment of time. It just takes 500 hours to freeze, or more.
500 hours. Wow.
No, that's quite low.
That's low.
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
Right, but it's probably an average. The piece I'm making at the moment is 2,000 to 3,000.
Oh my gosh.
So, so I was saying earlier about where your inspiration comes from. A lot of it comes from the clients, and the candelabra, for instance. I mean, they were supposed to celebrate the spirit of Catalonia. They were there for a flat in Barcelona, and I did all this research on the myths of the stuff, and especially Gaudi, but not using Gaudi as a pastiche, but using his source material and working new ways of doing it. And I came up with this design and presented it to the client, who then said, "Oh yes, but I want another one, and I want a dialogue between them." So then he had to go back to the drawing board and start all over again with new ideas that enhanced and married the ideas he already had. So it can be quite tough with them. But
there's always the compromise, but always getting to these end beautiful products. Interesting stuff. So John, back to you. We talked a little bit earlier on, obviously, about the inspirations behind your work, and I know, as you mentioned, that nature and plants and animals are part of that, but you also have this phrase that your designs are adventures in wearable objects, which I think is really lovely. And I know since winning the Goldsmiths award in 2016, you've since travelled the world, you've been to different shows, you've been at quite a number of jewellery events. You're currently doing some work with the Elisabetta Cipriani Gallery, if I'm not wrong. So can you tell me a bit about these international experiences that you've had and the sort of adventures you've been on?
My first international opportunity actually came a while before that, which was very fortunate. I was invited to exhibit at Loot in New York at the Museum of Art and Design. I think other jewellers will know about it. And that was an amazing opportunity, and as a result of that, made some great connections with collectors, and also was invited to show at SOFA in Chicago. So a few things had happened. I'd also shown in Karlsruhe at the Unique Fair. I don't know if you're aware of that one. And it's supported by the World Crafts Council, and they awarded me their award that year, which was really, really cool. And then winning the Goldsmiths Company Award did make a huge difference, and I was showing at SOFA that year, and they actually used my image to promote SOFA in Metalsmith magazine, which was pretty cool. Yeah, it's weird when you get an email from someone saying, look what's happened. So you're like, oh my God.
You're the cover man, so to speak, or your piece is the cover.
Yeah, no, I've been really lucky, I think, because my work makes for quite a bold photograph, particularly when there's colour involved, not well, like this one. There's another art jewellery fair in Amsterdam called Sierad, and I've done that now for 3 years, but the first year they used my image to promote the fair, so it was all over the Netherlands on billboards and things, which is pretty cool as well. I'm very spoiled in that sense.
That opened lots of doors because people immediately recognise your work? Or
yeah,
your
it has. Yeah, I wish it would translate into sales and money in the bank. So if anyone wants to commission anything, please come and speak to me.
It's the life of a jeweller.
Yeah, I guess maybe it's a longer term impact in that sense, but yeah, it's been great, and the necklace itself has travelled quite a lot. It's been to Chicago and it's been to Amsterdam, obviously, and I think it's about to go to Milan for a fair there with Elisabetta.
Brilliant. So can you tell us a little bit about what you are doing with Elisabetta, because I know she does champion contemporary design and not always jewellers as well, but sometimes sculptors to come down and have a go at making jewellery, maybe a medium that they've not worked in before.
Yeah, it's quite a new relationship for me, only since kind of October last year. So we're still finding our feet in that regard, and I think I'm one of only two jewellery artists amongst her other visual artists who she works with, the other being Uta Decker. So it's kind of, I guess with any artist she works with, it's always going to be new ground, but it's very exciting for me to be in that sort of company. So I'm really excited to see where that relationship goes.
Good. So we'll keep an eye out. Will potentially be some pieces or some collections emerging in due course.
Hopefully,
Great.
yeah.
So Tom, as discussed earlier, you do like to experiment. I know last time I saw you, you had burnt your finger or something quite wild.
Yeah, that was another accident.
Yeah. So there's always lots of...
you can still see the mark here.
Tom is always busy experimenting. And obviously, yeah, definitely exploring the boundaries of your materials, looking at platinum and going, what else can we do with this metal? Can you tell us about any other techniques you may have been honing in recent years or since the 2017 piece? How has this progressed since?
Well, it's really difficult to come up with a totally new and exciting idea every year. There's a very slow process when it comes to technology. Yeah, obviously I'm working on something new, but maybe not as new as the color platinum has been. With the color platinum, it has been, there were various universities in kind of testing ways to alter the color of platinum, and they didn't succeed in the last few years. So that is really a big thing, and to come up with something equally exciting or even more exciting, that will be very difficult. I very much hope that my work will shift from jewelry, a piece you can use, to a piece you can't use, which is more sculptural piece. That's one of my big dreams before my eyes become too weak and my mind used up from all those laser hours.
This laser welding is testament to your concentration levels.
Yeah,
Really?
This is a piece which takes about 2 weeks, just laser welding. It's not a really big piece. I have made pieces which had almost 2 million single laser spot welds in one piece, applied over 8 months. and after 8 months, I'm totally blind, and my mind feels totally alien after being isolated in my laser world. You have to imagine you work under a microscope in a dark room, on a very small scale, and that also does something to your mind.
This is a dedication to your cause, 100%.
I would really like to transform my work into large pieces, and at the moment I'm talking with a Japanese company to do a collaboration, which will be an item you can't really use. It will be a large item combining my materials, platinum, diamonds, my techniques, and a new material which is also new to me. So it's a completely new world. Hopefully I can start sometimes this year. I have a lot of ideas, but the problem sometimes is, obviously, I have to come after my commissions. I have commitments. I have deadlines, and I can't work as free as I would love to. And that kind of slows down the innovation process, if you want to call it innovation.
So we'll have to watch this space for Tom Rucker for the home, potentially?
For the what?
For the home?
Home.
These pieces, these objects that you might be working on or would love to work on?
Yeah, it's a useless.
Just a beautiful,
It will be beautiful but useless object.
Well, sign me up. So Zoe, since your win, you have, of course, you've seen jewelry developing and evolving, and as we were talking about earlier on, you work as a consultant with brands as well. So have you noticed kind of any particular design cues or materials coming to the fore in recent years, or is there anything that you yourself have been quite keen to try out in terms of new materials?
Okay, well, I think things have changed significantly since I received my award. That was 6 years ago, and in that time, jewelry trends are moving on all the time, as they would. But I think behind that, we're looking at the way that people are buying now, and the internet is having a huge impact on that. And looking at major brands are really focusing their efforts at the moment on younger market at the moment, so the millennials and Gen Z, and a lot of that is because of this research saying that by next year they'll make up half of the sort of workforce. So they're the ones with the money to spend, and they also have great influence. Not just they're not just a major target consumer, but also they have a lot of influence on the household spend. So focusing on them, you see a lot of companies. I've seen a lot of companies really change their approach. Tiffany is one. They've really changed their approach to focus down on this more youthful market, in the hope that they're going to capture these individuals for the rest of the time. They're going to get the major purchases, the engagement rings, but they're also going to come to them for their more everyday fashion pieces.
I don't know if anyone's seen their store in Covent Garden, but they've opened this whole new kind of concept store, Tiffany & Co. in Covent Garden, which has vending machines for buying their perfumes. It has Instagrammable walls where you can go in and take your photo. And it's just completely changed the way that you might have previously bought an item of Tiffany jewellery to make it much younger, kind of cool, trend-setting space. So it's worth a look if you want to get some retail inspiration.
So they're being really, really brave at the moment, and that's really interesting to see what these major companies are doing. And I think that what they're looking at also, beyond Tiffany, other brands are really looking at what's important to this group, what touches them. And although they're a generation that have grown up with a lot of fast fashion and throwaway items, actually there's a strong indication that they have a lot of very interested in social responsibility and pieces that have an ethical element to them, ethically sourced, ethically manufactured. So a lot of people in this room will be perfectly positioned to capture that audience, because that's a large part of what many of us do. And pieces that are just more interesting, that have a story and background. And anyway, that is influencing the look itself of the jewellery. So I think trends-wise, and it feels really wrong to talk about such commercial work and trends here, because we've just been talking about the most amazing innovations. But regardless, it's our world, we have to sell. And what I'm seeing is that pieces are becoming slightly more slightly more minimal pared back. We're not seeing tons of charms or multiple layered chains. It's all about simplicity and interesting pieces. Your earrings are perfect because, they tell a story, they're interesting, they make you seem, like, what are they? And you want to look at them, but they're slightly unbalanced and they're interesting, and there must be a story behind those. So that's really interesting. And gold is very strong, and I think that's going to continue. Materials-wise, I'd love to say that there is some amazing new material coming through, but I'm not seeing it. I think we're looking at really things that make you feel secure in your jewellery purchase. So your traditional materials, but done in a really clean, innovative, interesting way, where the categories of, say, fashion jewellery and fine are being slightly more blurred than we've seen them before. Bringing some fun to fine jewellery, seeing a lot more of that.
So I know we've definitely seen the rise of demi-fine, as it's often termed, so that kind of £1,000 to £5,000 bracket, potentially, and especially retailers like Net-a-Porter bringing in specific channels to sell demi-fine jewellery online. It's interesting that you touched on this idea of millennial and Gen Z consumers wanting to know more about where their jewellery comes from. Do you think that, again, like provenance and sustainability are coming into the questions now when they come to commission a piece of work? They actually want to be able to see how an item is made as well and know about the stones?
Yes, potentially. I think especially as they're such good researchers, they want information, they can find it in a second on the internet. So if there's a way of connecting to this group and, you can show the story, the development, workshop photographs, videos, really savvy brands with a lot of time or spends managing this really well. It's really difficult for the rest of us to do that. But yes, the more they can know about the history and the background behind what they're purchasing, the better, really. I think for the major purchases, big jewellery items that they're buying, I think this is definitely worth
extra level of trust,
Yeah.
definitely. Okay, so I'm going to ask you guys a couple of quickfire questions now. So, John, if I could start with you, what was your first memory of jewellery?
I think it must be my mother's wedding ring, and my mum also is a jeweller, so I was very exposed to it from a young age, and I'd watch her making, and was always fascinated by it, and eventually got to have a go in the workshop. So yeah, I mean, it was a very, very simple gold band, and we also had a neighbour who wore George Jensen rings, and when you're 3, you're kind of at hand height, and I remember being fascinated by the sculptural forms of those. Yeah,
The way they flow.
Yeah.
And how about you, Zoe?
For me, I used to buy beads and wire and make earrings and sell them to my mum's friends, who were probably far too kind and probably should never have bought them. But yes, early trading, it seems. And that's my first foray into the world of design.
Had a knack from a young age.
Maybe.
And so, most challenging design you've ever worked on, Fred, if you don't mind?
Well, they're all challenging. The real challenges come when you get things put in front of you that you weren't expecting. So, I mean, there's enough to do already with what you've designed, but every now and then you get horrendous surprises, and you have to deal with them, and they are a nightmare. Things like solder lines right across the middle of those candelabras, for instance, had a solder line right across the middle, and I had to sort it out. And then just technical stuff, but you just don't need it. So that's really challenging, because you have to save the piece.
Yeah, getting around the
and it's happened a
obstacles.
few times, so not nice.
Tough one. But yes, there will always be challenges, I suppose. Tom, design or piece that you're most proud of to date?
I think without any doubt that's the brooch. Absolutely.
Yeah.
If I try to remember when Brian asked me, can you please join the award ceremony? And I said, Brian, because of my recent father's loss, I'm not really good for public. So if you ask me to be there, then I will be in the corner and hide myself. And I think I promised our Prime Warden the third time I had to walk up to the stage and pick up my award. I think it was the third time I promised our Prime Warden I'm not coming back tonight.
But you had to go up 2 more times.
Yes, So I'm very proud of this particular piece. Yes, I am.
And of yourself, I'm sure, because it was a big thing to.
Yeah, and
to
also those people who supported me to let me be here today. There are a lot of people who participate in my success, starting with my dad, and then a lot of friends or a lot of colleagues who turned into friends, a lot of supporters, the company, of course, the council. I'm proud of being part of our family here. And without this family, I wouldn't be here, and I probably wouldn't be even Schüler anymore.
No.
It was always my dream to become an architect, but I couldn't because I wasn't the brightest.
I think you're halfway there with bridges, maybe.
And in Germany, when you want to study, you need a certain degree, and there was no point I will ever reach that degree. So I had to become a Schüler.
Well, their loss is our gain, I have to say.
There was no choice.
Thanks, Tom. So I think we've got a couple of minutes for some audience questions. So if any of you guys have had a chance to get some thoughts together, or if there's anything pressing you might like to say, there's already one hand going up at the back. Charlotte's going to run around with this roving mic. Thanks, David.
This one's for you, Tom. Are there other colors coming?
Yes, pink.
When will we see the pink?
Blue was the color I started with. And for some technical reason, blue is almost easy to achieve if you compare it to green, which was almost impossible. And green, yes, I managed to come up with a small piece in green, but I tried it 5 or 6 times until it was actually green and not blue or pink. As I said before, the process, if you write down a technical script of the processes I apply to the platinum on paper, if you give it to someone who studied metallurgy, for example, he will be very clear about it's technically not possible what I do, but somehow it works in reality. And that, having said that, there is hardly any control over the process. If I have to come up with a matching pair of earrings, sometimes I have to prepare 3-4 individual pieces to end up with a perfect matching couple. It's difficult, but yes, the answer is yes. Pink, green, white. Just leave it like it is. Yeah, brown, very ugly brown. So I did not pursue that color shade because it didn't look right. Yeah, but the most vibrant actually is blue. The blue is the color we associate the most energy and the most positive with it, because we have a blue sky and then we are happy because we see the blue sky. So I'm very happy about my blues.
Okay, next gentleman.
May I ask a general question? I mean, having developed a style that we'd recognise as Friedrich or as John Moore, is it then impossible to move on? Or do you find you're always locked in that style?
You reinvent yourself quite often, yes. I'm doing work now I couldn't possibly have done 10 years ago, because you move on, you have new ideas. They're very personal, so how you're judged in time is quite difficult to say, but I know now that things are coming onto the secondary market, as they call it, and the work is really naive as far as I'm concerned compared to what I'm making now. So you do evolve and you do change the way you work. And every now and then you do have to reinvent, like Tom's done with his blue platinum. You jump on something which is completely different to you, and then you can develop that one. So there are techniques which I've developed, which are minimal enamel and more to do with the metalwork. And so, but then you get the same problem. People start seeing it as what you are. So it's because it's what you are. Do you want to answer that with your?
It's something I used to worry about a lot, and I remember I came out of university with an idea for a collection, which I continued for a while, and then I wanted to break out from that because I felt very stuck. And the new collection felt so different to the old one. I was terrified, and I did it anyway. And people still identified it as mine. And I think I realised that you don't really need to worry, because it's just gonna. If it comes from an authentic place, then it's gonna have your mark on it. I mean, maybe if you put the first piece you made next to a piece you make 30, 40 years later, there might be a bit of a jump. But I think the best thing is to just relax in that regard and just let it come. And you know, if it takes people a while to catch up with you, then so be it. You know, I think the first person you have to please is yourself, or else what's the point in doing it?
That's a good answer. Oh, Will has a question.
Thank you. It's great to see a lot of influences from the natural world or the natural form, or that you're pushing boundaries and innovation with materials. I wonder, with sort of wider global thinking, we all have an individual social responsibility to the world we live in. Does this have an influence, perhaps going forward, in the material choices or processes you use to make them more sustainable and kind of have a better impact on the world?
Anyone in particular you would like to answer?
Well, yes, every time I've got the kiln on, I'm thinking about it. But what can you do? But you are conscious about it. You do minimise what you're trying to do. But yeah, it's not a very working with metals, and it isn't very world friendly. Coming from a mining family, I know that. So.
Yeah, we find some clean energy.
Ethical
sources.
or not, it comes out the ground.
Very true.
Well, I think you have to be quite conscious about that. There is not such a thing like ethical mining. Whatever resources we take out of the soil in South Africa, for example, which is the main source of my platinum, there are issues coming along with it. Yes, I'm fully aware of it, but there is not really a choice. There is also nothing like ethical trading of diamonds. We're not even talking about mining. The diamond trade is probably one of the bloodiest trades you could imagine, because diamonds are being used for financing terror, for paying for crime in those countries. I'm fully aware of that, but that's the profession we have.
Have you thought about anything like lab-grown diamonds?
Sorry?
Would lab-grown diamonds be something that might come into your work, do you think?
Why not? I have been thinking about it. The problem is that the technology is quite immature, and lab-grown diamonds are still quite expensive. And I think that may be something for the next generation. We won't be able to go and to take those desired metals and minerals out of the soil, because there will be more and more protests against it. I have thought a lot about it, and I have tried my best to buy my materials from sources I know they are conflict-free. But at the end of the day, no one can guarantee you buy that conflict-free diamond in Antwerp. You do not know where the diamond came from before. It can be second, third hand, and the first hand may have bought it from a non-ethical source. So this is really a problem for our whole trade.
So we'll have to just keep trying our best. Lots of innovations coming that way, hopefully, as well, with things like blockchain as well, but that's a whole other conversation for another time. So one more question. Okay, gentlemen. Thank
you. This is another rather wide-ranging question, which I think Fred has answered already in a way, because you mentioned Feliz and Lalique. So it's a question for the others, which is, if you're a painter or a sculptor, you have to be aware of the great traditions and the great masterpieces of the past, because you can't not be. But what my question is as jewelers, to what extent are you, on a kind of daily basis, aware of the great tradition that you're working within, or are you in a sort of contemporary bubble?
Good question. John?
I live under a rock, really. I'm really bad at seeing what other people are doing. Occasionally, if something really catches my attention, then I'll make an effort to investigate it. But yeah, I feel like I'm a naughty schoolboy who hasn't done his homework. But in a way, I sort of also want my own ideas to stay as pure as possible and unaffected by other people, which is why I try to look to nature for inspiration. And if it is made by a human, then architecture or other things, not jewelry, so that I can hopefully avoid becoming derivative of anybody else, if I can help it. And if it does happen to be the case, then I know in my heart that I've not set out to copy that person. So often if I do look at it, it's to know that I'm doing something different. But I'm inspired by other people's work for sure, but it's more their determination to succeed and the fact they've just gone and done it, which is the inspiration, not necessarily taking elements of the work itself and wanting to emulate that.
Zoe?
Yeah, thank you. For me, I think I probably do exist in a bit of a contemporary bubble, but actually just thinking, well, I mean, your answer was perfect, because I agree with a lot of what you've just said. But I almost make a conscious effort to not look at jewelry design when I'm creating collections for brands, because they can be so distracting and you can find yourself going down a certain route that you just think, hang on, that's not new. And when you're under a time pressure of designing a collection, that's about the worst position you could be in. So I find myself looking at furniture design and other things. That was another potential route for me, but jewelry design one. And yeah, so looking at those other influences or other art forms, I find really useful to keep your mind fresh and try and create something new.
Great. Well, thank you for your great insights this evening. If anybody has any more questions, there'll be a chance to grab these guys now. There's a paid bar out in the atrium now, so if you want to grab another drink and stay a bit longer, please do. But thanks again for joining us this evening, and we look forward to seeing you at our next event.